Hi, in this session we will give an overview of new features in Rapise 6.6. We are Alexei and Denis from Team Rapise. If during or after this session you will have any questions, please use the chat window for this advanced topic. Let's get started.
More and more people prefer to use Git for the version control, so we enabled the use of Git together with Rapise and Spira. So here is what we now have. The development PC has Rapise, and here we have copy of the test and develop tests. We save test files to Git. So we have some central Git repository or GitHub repository. We now will be saving test cases to Spira team and link them to corresponding files in this Git repository. And execution host that will run Rapise launcher will know how to read test set information from Spira and how to get corresponding files from the Git repository and how then execute this test set. Here we have public GitHub repository with a number of Rapise tests, and we want to link these test cases to test cases in Spira. I used this URL for checkout and just checked it out to my desktop. So I have a copy of this repository, and this copy is a local Git repository. It has a number of test cases in it. So I plan to link them one by one to Spira test cases. I'm opening first of them. Once it shows up, I'm simply pressing Save to Spira for this test case. It shows standard Save to Spira dialog. Now it also has new folder and new test case button. This means test case folder, and I'm going to create one. Call it automation scenarios, just to group my test cases. First scenario would be create new lead. Here it is. And I'm linking this test case to this Rapise test. Rapise detects that the test files are now under the control of the Git repository, so it asks, do you want to keep using Git and only add a link in Spira, or as before, I want to save the whole test in Spira? So I want to use this new feature, so I'm answering yes to link my test to Spira test case while keeping all files in Git. It is done. If I now go to Spira and go to test cases, and open this create new lead test case, what I see is that my test case is linked using the Git Root variable in the %signs. This means it remembers the relative path starting from the Git repository. I can easily do the same with other test cases in my test framework. Once test case is linked to Git and saved to Spira, I have two options on how to use it during the execution. The first option is when we allow Rapise launcher to do checkout for itself. And here is how you may enable this scenario. We have Spira, and I need to configure it, so I will be able to define the URL for checkout from Git. To do this, I need to go to Project Administration and edit custom properties for this project. Here I switch to test set. And now I'm going to define a number of additional properties. I need to define just one of them. It's called Git URL. Optionally, I may define more similar properties. That's Git user, Git password, and Git branch. These are for the cases when I need authentication and when I need to explicitly specify the branch from where to do the checkout. In these cases, I will just limit to one such property. Now I'm going to my test project, go into test sets. Now I'm adding a test set to include my test cases. Giving it some name. Go in there and adding test cases, just like I was doing it before, switching to automation scenarios and selecting both test cases. Now I want Rapise launcher to do checkout for me when doing execution of this test case. So I'm specifying this Git URL that I defined earlier. I'm using the URL available here in the GitHub website. That may be used for project checkout. That's it. I'm saving, and my test set is ready for execution. In some cases, like in pipelines or in continuous integration system, the checkout is done before the test execution by other means. So what we need is just to tell Rapise launcher where to find files that were checked out earlier. And here is how it may be done. We need to define a system variable called Git Root and specify the path there. Here is how it may be done. So suppose this is the host where Rapise launcher will be executing the tests. I need to go to System Settings, find Environment Variables, and add a variable called Git Root. Also define the value of this actual root by taking the same URL as we were using here. This one goes here. And in this case, we need to make sure that the test set does not have Git URL defined, because otherwise it would override my value. So I'm simply removing it from here and saving. And I don't need this custom property if I plan to use own checkout, so this may be skipped at all. So now Rapise launcher will know how to find files and how to execute your tests.
And in this section we are going to explore how to run Rapise test with Azure pipelines. I have an Azure DevOps project and it has a Git repository. And in this Git repository, I have a couple of Rapise tests that I want to run with Azure DevOps pipeline. At this point, I don't have any pipelines created, so I am going to create one and show you how to configure it to automatically investigate and find Rapise tests and run them and publish test results to be visible through Azure DevOps interface. I click Create Pipeline button and the system prompts me where is my code. And actually I don't want to create any pipelines in YAML and I want to use classic editor for demonstration purposes. Since my repository is in Azure, it is already selected and I click Continue. And let's choose .NET Desktop as a template for my pipeline. It already has some tasks that I may reuse. So I click Apply and pipeline is created. Let's now configure it. The configuration steps that I'm going to show are described in the documentation. So let's take a look. I'm going to Rapise doc. To reach the documentation for DevOps, let's go to Manual section and select Azure DevOps integration on the left. And here you may find the detailed description of how to configure the Azure DevOps pipeline. So let's return to our pipeline. First task is already configured. It installs NuGet on the host. The second task, we can reuse it. It is NuGet restore, but we need to use NuGet custom command task. To specify the command here, I go to the documentation. I find the section with Rapise test adapter NuGet package. And here is the line that installs Rapise test adapter package to run the tests. So I copy to clipboard this line and return back to my pipelines and paste it here. So this task is almost configured. The last thing to do is this task uses version of Rapise to install. So I need to copy this variable name and go to variable section and create this variable. And the version of test adapter I'm going to use will be 1.0.11. Actually, this is the last version of Rapise test adapter. Rapise test adapter is a NuGet package, and you may find it on nuget.org website. Let's now return to our pipeline. This step is configured, and we proceed to other steps. Here you can see build solution. We have nothing to build, so I will just remove a selected task. And the next step to configure is actually Visual Studio test task. The main configuration step here is to specify path to Rapise test adapter. If we scroll down, here is the field, path to custom test adapters. Let's find this path. If we go to documentation and scroll down here, we can see that Rapise test adapter NuGet installation task will install it in this location. So I just copy this path from documentation and insert it into pipeline configuration. Next, we need to configure where to find our tests. It can be done in test files section. Actually, let's execute all tests that are in our root folder. So I am selecting here asterisk slash asterisk sstest file. It means that using this filter criteria, test platform will execute all the tests that are in direct subfolders of the main repository folder. Configuration of this Visual Studio test task is complete. The next step is publish symbols path. We don't need it. So I think that we are ready to execute our pipeline. Let's just take a look where we will be executing it. So first I'm going to run it on self-hosted Windows agent, and I already installed and configured this agent on my machine, and it is running. To find out how to do this, you may go to documentation, find self-hosted Windows agent section, and here is the link to Microsoft manual that explains how to install and configure the agent. So now I'm going to save and run my pipeline. But first let's choose our agent pool here. I will use the default one. And now I click Save and Queue for my pipeline, and it should start executing my test shortly. Save and run. And our agent should soon receive this job to execute, and the result of execution should be visible in our agent job log that is running here. The first run always does not work, and the reason for that is that I forgot to add one task to this pipeline. The machine where I want to run my test does not have Visual Studio installed, so if we go to our Visual Studio test task and scroll it down, it says that it uses the test platform version latest. But here we need to change the combo and choose installed by tools installer. And now we need to add one more task to our pipeline. So I'm hitting plus here, and the task name is test platform Visual Studio test platform installer. So clicking add, and it is now here before I run the tests. And let's see what version we want to execute. Latest, let's use latest stable. And now I think execution of the tests should work. So clicking save and queue and choosing default again, save and run. Let's see what we have this time. Yeah, running job. Now the agent clones the source files to this host and starts execution. We can see desktop test is executing, and the second test is a web one, and it should open the browser and perform the login and logout from our demo library information system. Here we go, and the test results now are uploaded to Azure server. After execution is completed, we may look at the logs, and we also may look at the individual test run status. I click on tests here. This is the summary of running my tests. And if I want to look at the reports for specific test, I need to select this test in the list and go to attachments. And here I can see all the reports that are visible to me. There is a report in Rapise format, report in test anything protocol format. If screenshots are enabled for a test, you may find all the screenshots zipped here. And also here is the log file for the execution. And now I'm going to clone this pipeline and create another one that will run all the tests on Microsoft hosted agent. So I return to pipelines list. It seems I need to go inside, and here on the top right, choose clone. The new name will be Microsoft hosted. And I need to add one more task here to run on Microsoft hosted agent. This task should install Rapise on this host. So I'm adding one more task, and it should be a PowerShell task. So hitting plus, PowerShell, and adding this task to my pipeline. And to find out what script to run here, I go back to my documentation. Here we go, returning from self-hosted agents. And here I have Rapise installation task section. And it says that I need to download and place this PowerShell script to my repository. I already did it. And after that, I need to configure PowerShell task. Here is the example how I need to configure it. In the script path, I need to use the name of my script or path to it in the Git repository. So let's select it, return back, and paste here. And the last thing to do is to specify what Rapise version to use. I will copy this part from YAML example, copy and paste here my arguments. So now I have a task that installs Rapise on the host. Also, I may enable capturing video during execution. To do that, I go to my Visual Studio test task, scroll to settings file section, and in my repository actually I have Azure run settings file that enables capturing videos, and you may read in more details about it in the documentation. So this is how to enable capturing of videos. And also I don't need a Visual Studio Test Platform installer anymore because it is already present on Microsoft hosted agents. So removing it, and now I'm going to change the agent from default pool to Azure pipelines, and the agent specification, let's run this on Windows. I am choosing save and queue, save and run, and this time our test should run on Microsoft hosted agent. Let's take a look at logs, and it takes more time to execute because the pipeline needs to install Rapise on the host, and it also takes time for Microsoft to provision the host. Execution failed, and it happened because we forgot to configure something in this pipeline. So let's return back to the pipeline and edit it. Do remember this test platform task? We deleted it, but our Visual Studio test task still says that it should use tools from the folder where Tools Installer installed them. So let's switch to latest here back, and now test execution should be successful. Go into agent job. Execution is complete. Let's now go to the list of tests executed during this test run. Choosing paste. And we enabled capturing videos. And in attachments tab here, we now have screen capture. And we can watch this video. Here we go. This is the execution of our UI test. It launches library information system, performs the login, and then performs the logout. So this is how Rapise integrates with Azure DevOps. For details, please refer to the documentation section. In this section, I will show you how to define a custom global object in Rapise. Imagine that you are developing a testing framework and you want to define an object that will represent your application and will have actions like login, close, launch. And in Rapise 6.5, you may define a custom function and call it using functions object. Rapise 6.6 offers more convenient way. You may define the global object with these actions. Let's dive into it. This is the root test of my framework, and first thing I need to do is to create a library for my testing framework. To do that, I go to Files, right-click the root node in the tree, go to Create, and here I choose User Library. Let's provide the name, My App Library. Creating it. Here we go. My library will be automatically loaded in every running test in my testing framework. So let's define my global custom object. I'm pasting the code for it. Let's see how you need to define your object. First, if your object is named My App, then every action of this object should be prefixed with my app and underscore. Here I have 3 actions: my app launch, my app close, and my app login. Login has 2 parameters, and I may specify the types of these parameters here as well. To tell Rapise that this is the custom global object, you need to call SES global object function with the parameter the name of your custom global object. So this line tells to Rapise that it is a global object, and Rapise will automatically find all the actions that you define here. I am saving my custom global object, Ctrl S on the keyboard, and the next step to make this object visible to JavaScript editor and to RVL editor and to the object tree, I need to generate metadata for this object. To do this, I need to press Ctrl-Shift F5 on the keyboard when this file is active and open in Rapise. So I am pressing Ctrl-Shift F5 on the keyboard. You can see that command line window is blinking, and now if we will go to objects tree, we will see my app global custom object here. Let's now see how we can use this custom global object in our test. First, I will go to RVL, and here if I will expand the object dropdown, I see my app object here, and if I will go to action, it prompts me the actions of this object. Let's launch it first, then do the login, and parameter names are generated. All I need to enter is username and password, and then let's close my application. Here we go. If you want to do the same in JavaScript, this is also easy to do. If we go to JavaScript file, and if I will start typing my app, it is now here, but I don't need those function names. I may type my app and press dot, and here I can see actions of my object. And I may choose login, for example. I can see the signature, and I may use it here as well. I will comment this line and run my test. Here we go. You can see in the report that the functions were executed. So it means that this syntax actually works. Let's now see how you can specify your own icon for your custom global object. This is easy. If you have 2 files with the name my app, the name of your custom global object, and 32 suffix for 32 by 32 pixels PNG file, and 16 for 16 by 16 PNG file, you may simply copy these files. Let's copy them. And now we need to go to the folder of our library. So reveal in Explorer. And here I will paste my files. So I am going to close Rapise and start it again. Yeah, here we go. This is the icon of my application. If I will go to RVL, I will also see the new icon here. If you want to add more actions to your custom global object, do the following steps. Go to your library file and define the new action function. Don't forget about the prefix, my app underscore do something. Here we go. Saving the file, and then I need to press Ctrl-Shift F5 to regenerate metadata. Now if I will go to RVL and will choose my app again here, in the list of actions I should see do something action. So this is pretty easy and convenient, and you will find more details in the documentation as usual. Thanks for watching, and thank you for joining us today.